Hello and welcome back to 80 Days. So we need to get a move on because time's ticking on, but while I go to the market and sell some things, I need to address a couple of issues. First of all, apologies for the appalling audio mastering in the previous episodes. My recorder settings must have been set to something that was optimised for a different game, and it was just really bad, so hopefully I've sorted that out a little bit for this one. We can get £350 for the engine oil. I feel like we're probably going to need these timetables. Calcutta and Chittagong, I feel like that we might be going that way. Henna, snuff, tobacco. Well, let's buy that, I guess. We've got quite a bit of money. Aside from that, we will go straight out. We need to get a move on because we're already halfway through, and I don't think we're halfway around the world. We're also considerably further behind some of the other people, as you can see. Oh. Madras was a city within a city. Inside the walls and fortifications of Fort St. George was Whitetown, where British Mem Sahibs and factors traded and went to church and travelled from place to place in mechanical palanquins. I found the colonial officers to be particularly dim and hard-headed. I would have blamed it on the humidity, but the locals seemed to manage their wits without any trouble. I ventured into Blacktown, where I attracted a few glances, but no real attention. No doubt there were many reasons for a lone foreigner to wander under the cramped streets and back alleys. After a few minutes, I realised I was being stalked. Not about that. I turned to face my shadow to find myself face to face with a nun. "Would you like a blessing, good sir?" An ornate gold cross hung heavily from her neck. "Yes, sister." Her smile sprouted razors, and with no further warning she brought her heavy gold cross down on my head with a crack. My vision sputtered and sparked into blackness. When I awoke, I was in a nunnery. My nun assailant offered me a cool cloth. "I am Sister Panimala, and this is the convent of the Sisters of Didacus." Didacus? Didacus? What's a Didacus? Didacus is a Spanish saint who died in 1463. King Philip II commissioned a clockwork automaton of Didacus, which could pray. The first automaton, man of God, but not the last. She took a breath. My order does not believe, as the Pope does, that automatons are abominations. We believe that machines too are capable of grace. What should we do? All this theology while my head still span. I went briefly cross-eyed and fell over. The sister propped me back up. "Please listen to me," she said. "The Didatian sisters are dedicated to the search for a machine which has a soul, and now we require for your help in our search." You could simply have asked. The Lord does not ask, he expects. What, expects you to beat me over the head with a gold cross? Now listen to me. She helped me woozily to my feet. "If you find an automaton whose shard is engraved with a soul on your travels, send a telegram to us. We have our own receiving station here. We will reward you materially if that is your wish, but we must have such a shard." Right, so... okay. "A shard like this?" I asked, holding out the shard of glass I had purloined from the docks in Antalya. The nun gasped. "I knew it when I saw you," she declared. "You are quite sure this contains a soul?" "Oh, indeed." The nun breathed in sharply, turning the shard over and over in her hands. "Yes," she murmured. "I can see there is something not right, something different. We must study this." Quickly she reached to one side and picked up a silver chest. It looked extremely valuable, and so I gasped when she pressed it into my hands, I assume. "One of our treasures for you." Then she dismissed me. I hurried away, wondering how long until the Sisters of Didacus understood my deception and came looking for me again. Okay. That's valuable in Pyongyang. Right, we need to be going... departs in 2 days. No. Departs tomorrow. Yeah, let's go straight to Calcutta. Tomorrow at 6 PM. Okay, we've got no choice. We've got to hang around. Hotel. Before turning in for the night, I went to stretch my legs but found nothing of any great interest. Fascinating. Calcutta. Embark on the Western Flower to Calcutta. Hire extra space for 13 quid. Sweltering heat, baking sunshine and mild seas, a wearisome journey, but we have some gear. Go! Okay. It was not until the Western Flower left the shore of India that I truly relaxed and was convinced the Sisters of Didacus were not going to bang me over the head once again. Here on the open water, they could surely not reach me. I absolutely love this game, but basically the only problem I have with it is that there is some spelling and grammatical errors, and like, you know, I would have proofread this whole game for free if I'd have known. So, sharpen up. The water was calm and crystal clear beneath our prow. I took a turn about the ship to familiarise myself with her and the other passengers. The Flower was a passenger liner, but one used by the middle classes and business people, travelling the coast and making trades between south and north. One such was Madame Sumati, a hard-nosed lady who proclaimed her profession to be weaver, but by the sound of it managed a warehouse floor in which several hundred workers did her weaving for her. "You are a good employer, I am certain," I suggested. She shook her head. "I employ no one. We are a cooperative. I am merely the most experienced in our little collective." Then she smiled a crocodile smile, which left me in no doubt as to her position. Going north to Waltair. On the second day we reached the port of Waltair. Madame Sumati disembarked, catching my arm as she stepped from the boat. "You are going all the way to Calcutta, are you not?" she asked. "If so, look up my husband there. Tell him he may return any time he chooses." With that, she stepped away from the ship. "It seems you make friends wherever you go." Oh no, sorry. "It seems you make friends wherever you go," Monsieur Fogg remarked to me wryly later that day. Of course I had to do the ridiculous voice for Fogg. It sort of exercises the vocal cords, you know. Okay, day 42, time's ticking on. Racing up to Calcutta. We really do need to crack on here. We're definitely not getting around the world, but it seems very unlikely that we're going to come anything but last in the race as well, because I've spent the entire time exploring everywhere like I'm on holiday. We made good time up the coast of India, enjoying the rolling of the waves and the glorious thick scents from the kitchens. It seemed it was traditional on board to hold a banquet for lunch on the final day. We enjoyed ourselves thoroughly, and all but rolled down the gangplank into Calcutta. So, okay, we can sell some stuff here. The China tea set, we can double our money on that, so thank you. The hooded cloak, we'll have that. The silver chest. Now, are we going to Pyongyang? That is the question. "Very good bargaining, Passepartout." Where is Pyongyang? In China, I guess? I mean, oh man, they're out in like New Zealand and places. Gotta get going. Do need to... Oh. Crap. That's bad. We don't have a good route. I need to try and find one. So... hoping we can speak to someone. Calcutta was an industrial city which had built its wealth on opium, textiles and indigo, but that was not to say it was uncultured. The chai shops which I passed by were all thronged with affluent babus and behenjis discussing poetry and literature and the sticky subject of Indian independence. It seemed a natural outcome of events, and I said as much, to be loudly shouted down by several pro-British voices who in turn were shouted down by those fervently in favour of self-rule. It was certainly a thorny issue, and I wondered if we would be able to avoid all consequences of it. "Where is the most dangerous right now?" I asked, and a woman nodded. "I hear the mountains to the east are teeming with separatists," she declared. "They mean to attack Chittagong." I returned quickly to Monsieur Fogg. Am I stuck here now? Oh, I can explore, I guess. Hopefully we'll find something out. Oh, there we go. We can get to Chittagong, and down, past Rangoon, to Singapore, and up to Hong Kong. That's where we need to be going. I walked the streets a while, discovering the possibilities for how we might make progress. Thank you for doing that. Right, so Chittagong or straight to Singapore or straight to Hong Kong. We could go car to Hong Kong. Oh. It departs in 3 days, but we could negotiate. No charge. Tomorrow. Perfect. Tomorrow at 9. We are off. And I just need to pass some time in Calcutta. I guess... Can we go to Pyongyang? No, let's just sell that here. It's worth a fair amount. If we end up in Pyongyang, then fine, but... aside from that... we'll just bed down and get on our way. We took a room and settled in, and I went out to explore a little and found a charming British clerk who had mislaid a locket, which I spotted, and who then, in between fits of shouting, mentioned that you could pick up hunting rifles in Hong Kong, extremely valuable in Batavia. I thanked him, and he laughed, and went about his day. Amazing. Okay, let's get to Hong Kong, embark. Mild seas, that's fine, cool. The SS Thunder. This is a long, long way. The SS Thunder of the Apcar shipping line had 10 years previously set the record for the fastest journey between Singapore and Hong Kong. That's good to know because we are going from Singapore to Hong Kong, and her captain promised us a journey of 10 days rather than the usual figure of 12. Superb. If you can shave 2 days off our journey, then you might get yourself a little tip. Not that you can tip the captain in this game unless you're prompted to, but, you know, it's the thought that counts. Heading around the coast to Chittagong, home of some delicious cuisine. So is Madras, actually. Indian food is like my favourite kind of food, so, yeah. I took a turn around the deck, interested in who else I might find aboard. Captain Ong An Lee was a dashing fellow with merry eyes who had run off from his family and joined the merchant navy in Singapore at a young age. The ship was crewed by Lascars, a mix of Indians, Singaporeans, Chinese and Malay, who all spoke an entirely incomprehensible sailor's dialect, which I found utterly fascinating. I endeavoured to pick up as many words of the odd patois as I could on our voyage. Early on the first day, we stopped at the port of Chittagong to take on more passengers. Then the captain blew the whistle loud and long. "Full speed," he declared, "you'll see." Yeah, that's right, speed up. Okay, just going to have a sip of coffee. Ah, that's better. Very early in the morning when I'm recording this, and I've got a bit of a cold as well. We dined at the captain's table. He made his toast, and then asked Monsieur Fogg outright whether he was an opium trader, and I his factotum. I looked at my master, who merely said he was not. Captain Ong guffawed and commanded our glasses filled once more. "It is a profitable business," he advised. "A man can make his fortune in opium if," and he addressed the last to my master, "he is not squeamish." "Morals are not squeamishness," I replied coldly. "The opium trade profits from the weakness of men." "Yes," Captain Ong agreed, "some people are weak, and some overcome their weakness. I believe in freedom. The people of China are not children, that we need to mind them like an over-anxious parent." Monsieur Fogg gave me a quelling look before turning to the captain. "Your business is your own, Captain Ong, as long as you conduct me to Hong Kong in 10 days as agreed." The captain raised a glass. "Fear not, Mr. Fogg. I have anxious customers awaiting my cargo after all. Oh, so he's an opium trader. Can't condone the smuggling of opium on steamships." I awoke thinking of croissants. Not just any croissants, my friends, but the croissants made on the corner of the street where I grew up, delicately crisp on the outside, yielding within. I could smell them, almost feel the texture of the pastry on my tongue. You are making me want a croissant now. I was so lost in contemplation that I was 3 minutes late to attend my master's shave. Zut alors! I love croissants, and it would be very nice if I had one to go with my coffee right now, but I don't. The Lascars who made up the crew seemed to find me an object of great curiosity. I found them curious in return. My attempts to learn a few words of their cobbled-together tongue were met with howls of good-natured laughter. A young Malay shyly asked me what Paris was like. "It is beautiful," I said cautiously. "The Seine glitters like a snake, the theatres spill light and colour onto the streets, the cafes are full of men and women debating and drinking endless cups of coffee. There are beautiful women and beggars all on the same street." Oh, sorry. There are beautiful women and beggars all on the same street. I thought it was like the women and the beggars are both beautiful. Even the beggars are beautiful in Paris. She looked at me curiously. I took a deep breath, dissatisfied with my answer. "Never mind my thoughts. Perhaps you will see it yourself one day." She nodded, accepting my answer. I doubted she would ever set foot in the city of my birth. "Your character is now suave." I was already suave, but I've just got a little bit suaver. Zooming round to Singapore, and we are on day 49, so really getting on here. Today we stopped at Singapore on the southernmost tip of the Malay Peninsula. Singapore had been British for many decades, and from the harbour it seemed almost as if some little town in Kent or Surrey had been shipped, piece by piece, and reconstructed on this far shore. We exchanged some labourers for a dozen or so merchants, and made sail by early afternoon. Nice. Yeah, I'm just not about sticking around in these places now. I've basically wasted so much time in Europe that we are fast approaching our deadline and we still have to cross the Pacific Ocean. So, I mean, we basically have to get across East Asia, Australasia and America in like 20 days. The captain was on deck in the afternoon as I took a turn. He seemed to hesitate for a moment before he approached and abruptly said, "My brother is an opium addict." "I am sorry." He laughed without any true good humour, the merriness entirely gone from his dark eyes. "My family is from Shanghai. We were poor, but instead of relieving my parents' cares, my older brother became an opium eater who lied and stole and wasted his days." "Who sold him the opium?" His eyes hardened. "Does that matter? I know that it is British opium. I am no fool, but he chose it." "It is a sickness," I said gently. "A disease. He was consumed by it." I left Shanghai at 15. I ended up in Singapore with nothing to my name but a shirt. And look at where I am now. My parents live well on the money I send them. "What of your brother?" A look of fleeting sadness crossed his face before it hardened over. "I do not know. Dead, probably, if not begging on the streets." He took a shaky breath. "I have not talked of this for many years, but I wanted to tell you this, monsieur. Things are not so simple as you seem to think. Captain Ong bowed stiffly, and my thoughts flickered between the captain's story and the chests of opium even now in the cargo hold. It's a moral quandary to be sure. You sell your brother opium and then he destroys himself and your family. So, congratulations. But then also, his parents are living comfortably on the money he gives him from being an opium smuggler, so it's a double-edged sword. We hit a squall today and were confined to our cabins. I could hear the sailors shout to each other outside as the ship pitched from side to side. Monsieur Fogg, in an uncharacteristic display of humanity, was noisily sick into a nearby bucket. I mopped his brow, an act which he clearly deemed over-familiar even in his compromised position. Oh dear. Come on, SS Thunder. Come on. One of the Indian labourers was lying limp in the corridor outside our cabin. "Hello?" I asked doubtfully, and he moaned. He looked feverish, clammy, and rather warm to the touch. I called one of the crew to attend him and watched as he was shouldered away to his cabin. The steward, a wizened Indian of indeterminate, weather-beaten years, clapped me on the shoulder as thanks, and in his disjointed tongue promised to take care of him. Or at least, so I assumed. I think he's probably an opium fiend as well. Don't take opium, kids, it's bad for you. The ill labourer was walking in slow circles about the deck when I came up. He looked over as I walked past, and I greeted him with a wave. He gave me a glare. I was to take up a job at an APCAR warehouse in Hong Kong, but now they think I will not be able to work well. I have no job because of you. He turned away, and I fled the deck rather unceremoniously. Well, you know, you make an omelette, you break some eggs. Alright, Hong Kong. We reached our destination in the promised 10 days. Quite a miracle, and one that Captain Ong was clearly proud of. He shook our hands with great gusto as we disembarked, his eyes dancing. Good luck, he called, as I looked around the crowded, colourful harbour of Hong Kong. Day 53. Right, can we sell anything here? No, but there's some stuff for sale. Safety harness, dominoes, cowboy boots. Okay, there's an American set which we might need. That's valuable in Beijing, Batavia. I actually am going to just take a punt and not do any trading here. Can we... Okay, we can't go anywhere from here, so we need to explore Hong Kong in order to find some trade routes. Here we go. North to Beijing and Yokohama, Japan. I was perusing a market stall in Hong Kong when I was greeted by the familiar quivering moustache of Monsieur Fix. "What are you doing here of all places, monsieur?" I exclaimed. He offered me a drink, and given that I had a few hours to spare, I could not, in good conscience, refuse. He led me into a dingy basement where a sour-faced Chinese woman presided over several tables and a few couches with men and women, mostly Europeans, in various states of lolling intoxication. Yes, it appears to be an opium den. Seems to be a lot of opium around here. I mean, obviously this is supposed to be the 19th century, so there probably was, but there you go. Monsieur Passepartout is not an opium addict. "This is an opium den," I exclaimed uneasily. "The gin is good," he told me, and ordered us a bottle to prove his claim. It was thin and sharp, but not wholly distasteful. We chatted amiably for a time, though I noted he kept my glass full, and not his own. "Listen," he said abruptly. "I am a police detective, sent from the London office." "You a detective?" I could not hide my incredulity, but he presented me with his commission, which seemed in all respects genuine and correct. "You have been duped," he resumed. "Monsieur Fogg's wager is a pretext. Last September a robbery of £55,000 was committed at the Bank of England by a person whose description answers exactly to that of Monsieur Phileas Fogg." He's what? £55,000, did you say?" I slurred, feeling the effects of the bottle of gin. "That surely cannot be." You know scarcely anything of your master, Fix ground on. You went into his service the day he departed on this so-called wager, carrying little but a large quantity of banknotes. He's too gallant to be a thief, I protested. Fix strokes his moustache. Thieves are frequently gallant, he assured me, charismatic even. You cannot accuse Monsieur Fogg of charisma, I replied. Fix shrugged. I have not met him. I only know that Scotland Yard have sent me out here to capture this Fogg. The detective hissed a breath which fluttered the tips of his oiled moustache. I could arrest you as his accomplice. I have done nothing wrong, I protested. Then you must help me, he replied. Fix pressed a pipe into my head and I unthinkingly lifted it to my mouth and inhaled. Before my brain caught up with my hand, the sweet smoke percolated through my lungs and my head felt heavy. Opium, I breathed in accusation. The last thing I remember is the blurred and wavering outline of Fix's self-satisfied face as I fell upon the table. Hope that doesn't waste too much time. Again, don't take opium, kids. It's a waste of time. Alright, well, you could go to Yokohama. There's a steamer, someone else already going that way. Or Beijing, and then on all the way. No, that's not right. Let's go to Yokohama. Tomorrow at 1. Okay? And it's an airship. So let's camp out. Wait, we've got no money? Mugged. Got mugged off. Oh no. I wandered the streets desolate and alone. I had grown so used to tending to the whims of my master that I felt myself a stray leaf, abandoned to the winds of terrible misfortune without him. Everywhere I went, I asked after him, but with scant success. I slumped outside our hotel, disconsolate, when a tramp approached me. You look as spit-polished as that other fellow, he remarked. Long gone, no doubt, I replied dourly. Was going off to Yoking-Harming or something like that, the man replied, demonstrating a staggering lack of knowledge for a local man. With that, the fellow ambled away. In my addled state, it was as though he had never been. Yoking-Harming? Yokohama? Was that the truth of it? Yeah, I've got no money, so how am I going to get there? Go. Okay, well, we're on it somehow. I awoke in a small dark cabin with the... Oh, right, I see, it's like a story progression. I awoke in a small dark cabin with the familiar hum of an airship motor underneath me. As for my head, it was attached to my body, and that was the best that could be said of the situation. Where was I? How had I ended up aboard this ship? I guess Fix is probably something to do with this, unless I've been squirreled away by Fogg, who already knew what was going on. We'll find out right after I have some coffee. A fragmented series of images sprang into my mind with vivid force. An opium den, Fix's accusation against my master, an opium pipe pressed into my gin-soaked hands, and then only blankness. I resolved to find an answer to the most important question. Where was my master? Just as soon as I could bring myself to uprightness, that was. Ambulation was a task best approached in stages, and I am ashamed to say that I fell at the first hurdle and collapsed back into my hard cot, trembling and insensate. Gin and opium, potent combination. I drew the scratchy blanket about my shoulders and ventured out of my cabin at dawn, having gathered my opium-stewed wits during the night. I spotted a wind-burned member of the crew. The tool belt at her waist hung with rope, bolt cutters, and all manner of strangely shaped tools. "Excuse me," I croaked, rather more weakly than intended. She looked me over and then chuckled. "Oh, you are our mysterious late arrival. How is your head?" "Tolerable." She rattled her bolt cutters, and I winced. "Oh yes, you seem perfectly well." What airship is this? This is the... She searched for an appropriate translation. Jade Tiger. We're a passenger ship bound for Yokohama. She saw my expression and added with obvious relish. In Japan, that is. You really don't remember? I'm afraid not. I gave her the half sheepish, half innocent look that had worked at least a few times on dear Mammon. An Englishman carried you aboard and paid for your berth. He said you were ill, though you were clearly half crazed with opium. She shrugged and added, he had a magnificent moustache. Fix! That blackguard had paid for my ticket from Hong Kong to Yokohama to separate me from my master. I mean, I could have paid for my own ticket had I not been mugged off by him. Today I apprehended the cold truth of my situation. I would arrive in Yokohama the following morning without a penny to my name or even a change of clothes, and with no notion of my master's whereabouts. He was bound to come after me. Surely. I was his gentleman's gentleman, and he was my gentleman. Was that not the most inviolable bond of all? Still, I made full use of that salopard Fix's ticket and attacked the buffet with the gusto of a man who was not sure where his next meal would come from. For indeed I was not. Okay. Intense. We tethered at Yokohama in the early afternoon. I greeted the waterfront apprehensively, my eye passing lightly over the slope-roofed buildings, carriages and bare cherry trees. I took a deep breath and puffed out my chest. I had been in far worse circumstances than these. With that thought, I stepped foot onto Japanese soil. Okay. There's nothing we can do here except hotel, so let's hotel. A hotelier took pity on me and gave me a bed. Explore. Okay, Manila. Oh, that looks... No, that's not promising. I know... Okay, we can go on from Yokohama by steamer, which is where everyone else seems to be going. I joined the circus. It was, in retrospect, the most sensible action I could have taken, given my varied skills at acrobatics and clowning. I had quickly realised that the matter of how to find my master was entirely secondary to the larger question of ready funds. And ready funds were what the sharp-eyed proprietor of the travelling circus offered. I volunteered myself to dress up as a lady while flaunting my moustaches. A most demeaning form of entertainment, but brought up a notch, I felt, by my excellent singing voice and the renditions of classic French ballads with which I kept them entertained. Then, as I blew a final kiss to the crowd, I was struck dumb. Who should be in the audience but my own Monsieur Fogg? I was not ashamed, friends. I ran to my master, who was looking particularly unperturbed by the disturbance I was causing. I was abducted, monsieur, I blurted by way of explanation. It is of little consequence, was his only response. Come, we have lodgings to arrange and a journey to continue. Oui, Monsieur Fogg, I agreed, counselling a hasty withdrawal from the ill-tempered glares of the circus performers and audience. That we do. I collected my pay packet and resigned my tenure after a single night. Your funds have gone up by more than £1,000. Yes, we appear to have all of our money back because Fogg presumably had it. Okay, very quickly, what have we got here? Monkey wrench, amethyst, I don't think we're going to need that. Burlington, isn't that in London? Okay. £230 to Manila. No, Yokohama to San Francisco. We've got to negotiate this. £3,000 to go today. The ticket's also 4,000, so we can't do that. It's basically all of our money to go tomorrow, but Alright, fine. That's that. I guess we have to bed down and crack on. And then we're going to be extremely poor when we hit California. With the last few hours of the evening, I spent a while talking to the hotelier to find out what I could, but obtained nothing but advice for doing laundry. "Day 60, Monsieur Fogg murmured that night in his sleep, and we are not even yet halfway." Yeah, it's not going well, sorry Fogg. Let's depart, let's crack on, see how far we can get. I mean, look, everyone else is already chugging across America, so... Okay. We've got less than £1,000 left. This is pretty bad. The Water Lily was a sleek iron-hulled ship to submarine prototype, captained by a severe American by the name of Wicker, who wore a top hat at all times and preferred tea to coffee, which greatly endeared him to Monsieur Fogg. In addition to the usual complement, the Water Lily carried an entire corps of brass-goggled engineers and a brace of submariners on standby should the captain call the order to submerge. The rumour was that she had been a slave ship and had only been refitted for passenger transport a good few years after Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. But I saw no trace of a dark past aboard. The crew seemed a happy family and welcomed us into their iron-hulled bosom. The best kind of bosom. I was just going to do basically a one-off run on this game, but seeing as how we're quite so close to the end, and the end of the time limit, and we've got so far to go, I might have to play this again, because I have learned quite a lot and played quite badly. Our captain, while hardly let me try that again. Our cabin, while hardly spacious, was adequate to our needs. One of the midshipmen came by to show us how to use the pressure seals in case of submersion, but in all other aspects, I look forward to a peaceful steamship ocean crossing. I was not to be so lucky, of course. Okay, seems to be going pretty smoothly so far. The salty air blew cool and sharp against my face as I opened the door onto the top deck. It was painfully early, and the only passengers awake were a group of Chinese labourers hunched miserably near the stern. One of their number was vomiting copiously into a bucket. I offered him my own secret remedy which I had brewed up for just such an occasion. He swallowed it down with a certain dubious desperation, but immediately improved in both complexion and temperament. He thanked me most profusely. I asked him about the captain, but with no language in common, communication was impossible, so we settled into playing dice in quiet silence until the sun rose. Again, not so bad so far, but something's going to happen. I accompanied Monsieur Fogg to a game of whist with a family of American missionaries who were travelling back to San Francisco for a family wedding. My master began strongly, but Mademoiselle Loretta, the eldest girl, had a sharp eye and won several hands in a row. A new round was dealt. I noticed Mademoiselle Loretta slip a card into her sleeve. I blinked twice in pure astonishment and glanced up at her face, which was utterly calm, betraying nothing of the action of her nimble fingers. The minister's daughter was a cheat, and a skilled one at that. I called her out in front of the gaming party. She denied the charge prettily, and then burst into floods of beautifully manufactured tears. A masterful performance. Maman would have been most proud. Alas, Monsieur Fogg had an Englishman's reaction to lachrymose femininity, and so was possessed of an irresistible desire to flee its damp radius. "That was ungentlemanly," he said curtly, after we had taken a somewhat hasty leave. It was monstrously unfair, but I had been cleverly outplayed in the social game. The word of a servant cannot be set directly against the honour of a minister's daughter. Our journey continued on. Fogg's well-being is down to 89, which is pretty good, but, you know, I feel like I know it's up to 90 again. I feel like it's going to drop considerably over the coming days. I spent today in the company of the Water Lilies submariners. They were all hardy men and women who preferred the dim enclosed spaces of the hold to the top deck. Too much sky, one of them said, squinting suspiciously. Her crewmate nodded. All that fresh air. They shuddered collectively and suggested a bracing race to the boiler room. I impressed them with my physical prowess, coming in a respectable fourth just behind their commander. She was a half-Japanese, half-American sailor by the name of Davis. "Izumi to my friends," she said, clapping me heavily on the shoulder. "Now, a rematch of your choice." "Very well," I declared, and promptly suggested a drinking contest. A grin of vicious, unqualified glee spread across Commander Davis's face. I began to think my suggestion a poor one. 3 flasks of sake later, I was convinced of my grave error. Commander Davis was apparently legendary for her ability to hold her drink, whereas I ended the evening in unexpected embrace with a starboard bulkhead. Not, perhaps, one of my more successful adventures.
"That sake is remarkably powerful."
I love sake. I was climbing the rigging as exercise, of course, and not at all for the purposes of spying on the crew to appease my own rapacious curiosity, when I heard 2 of the crewmen arguing in a pidgin mix of English and Japanese. I peered upwards, eager to match faces and expressions to the voices I could make out. They were both Japanese, but one of them was dressed in Western style, and the other in Japanese hanten and hakama. As I watched, the trouser-wearing sailor grabbed violently at his compatriot, but missed his footing and tumbled over the platform's edge. I was unable to look away as he fell. His body lay still and crumpled on the deck, but I heard his scream in my head for days after. I looked up and managed to catch sight of the fallen sailor's companion, his face still and pallid. Was that guilt in his eyes or merely shock? He slipped away before the captain arrived, and I followed him. He retired to the crew quarters, and I began to hear the sound of desperate muttered prayers. Grim. The Water Lily's crew held a funeral for the dead sailor. I was not specifically invited, but felt a sense of responsibility having witnessed the man's fatal plunge. Captain Wicker led the Christian service with customary grimness. I was surprised by the absence of the American minister, but later discovered that the captain was of a different denomination and considered the missionary and his family only a short step up from heathens. Oddly, only half the crew had come to pay their respects. I went in search of the rest, only to find them making an offering in front of a makeshift Shinto shrine in the crew quarters. The fellow from the night before was amongst them. "The captain doesn't want us at his Christian ceremonies. He thinks nothing of our faith," one of the soldiers told me bitterly. "We make our offerings here instead." Religious segregation. Gotta love it. Sarcasm. Storm. Too exhausted to write a proper entry. Suffice to say, we are still afloat. As we settled down for the night, I was struck by an unrelated thought. "Monsieur Fogg, the dateline."
"I have altered our watch already,"
Monsieur Fogg replied calmly.
"Did you think I might forget?"
My master was of course correct. With an eye such as his, it was unthinkable that he might miss such a detail. We had reached the point directly opposite Greenwich, where the hours we had lost in travelling around the Earth were added back. A whole extra day! Hey, lovely. But still day 66, and we haven't even hit the western coast of the United States, so not looking great. Yesterday's storm hit us with little warning. One moment I was preparing Monsieur Fogg's shaving water to exactly the right temperature. The next, we were being tossed from one end of the cabin to the other. We were only lucky that the bed was securely nailed to the floor. The ship shuddered and moaned as the seas flickered with lightning. The storm lasted nearly 6 hours and blew us far off course. The captain spent most of the day peering at his charts, trying to locate our position. There is no land anywhere upon the horizon. Oh dear. Oh no, look at this. This isn't good. This is not good. The captain announced a change of destination. The Water Lily would now make for nearby Hawaii rather than San Francisco. We would make port in Honolulu in 5 days and would have to find our own further conveyance from there. That's not great. Monsieur Fogg's lips pressed ever so slightly together.
This,
my master said,
will not do.
Indeed not, sir, I agreed, not even daring to calculate the delay and expense to our unexpected diversion would cause. Monsieur Fogg gave me a cool, appraising glance.
Captain Wicker has reneged upon his word as a gentleman, he said curtly, before lowering his voice to an almost furtive undertone. Our course is clear. We must mutiny.
I opened my mouth to agree, wholeheartedly, but he continued on without so much as a pause.
See to it, Passepartout.
Use
your
natural charm, I interjected brightly.
Quite,
he said, with the agreeableness of a gentleman who has just given his valet a near Herculean task.
We will mutiny in 5 days when we reach Honolulu. Make your preparations as you see fit.
Uh-oh, I don't feel good about leading a mutiny on a steamship. My task was clear. I was to foment mutiny aboard the Water Lily. I decided to begin by exploiting the crew's animosity toward one another, divide and conquer, or so dear Maman had always counselled. I considered inflaming their religious passions, though such passions were by their nature unpredictable, so I decided to steal the captain's wall-mounted crucifix and blame the theft upon the Shinto crew members. The captain took the theft as a personal affront and ordered a humiliating search of the crew's quarters. The officers destroyed the Shinto shrine in their search, and several of the crew were dragged off to the brig for fighting. That didn't go very well. Sorry about that. It was with satisfaction that I noted a certain increase in tension aboard the Water Lily, a situation I would carefully have to exacerbate if my master's mutiny was to have any chance of success. Next, I attempted to ingratiate myself with Commander Davis... Wait, ingratiate? Well, they're in the brig. Commander Davis and the submariners, who were rather storm-tossed and disgruntled. There are no storms underwater, the commander muttered, her hair a tangle underneath her cap. I offered her a hairbrush, hoping to appeal to her vanity. Alas, it appeared the commander was far more proud of her musculature rather than her coiffure. She rejected my offer out of hand and dismissed me soon after so she could run drills with her crew. Not going well. We've got 10 days left and we're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. This is pretty much a write-off. I had attempted to suborn the obvious targets aboard the Water Lily, but wars were often won by the unexpected. With that in mind, I turned my attention upon the valets and batmen, to the ship's officers. Being a gentleman's gentleman myself, I knew the value of a good servant. Conversely, I was also aware of the disruption a bad one could cause. I appealed to them with my considerable charisma and style, making an impassioned, prettily worked speech. I dare say I managed to sham a few crystalline tears at exactly the right moment. It was almost laughably easy to draw them into my cause. The captain and his officers were not, it must be said, popular amongst their servants. Well, seeing as how we're nearly at the end of the 80 days, I might as well just drag this episode out until we finish it, however we do. I spent the day putting the last finishing touches to my planned mutiny. It was a matter as delicate and serious as the creation of a soufflé by a master chef. I spread the word of my signal amongst my allies and stayed up late, ensuring every man and woman on my side was true. Here we go. It's showtime. We reached Honolulu in the dark. The captain took a small skiff into the harbour with a few of his officers, wishing to inquire about repairs before putting the Water Lily into dry dock. Monsieur Fogg watched the boat for a long moment.
"Now is the time," he said crisply. "I trust everything is in order?"
I assured him it was, and he nodded, having expected no other response.
"Let us hope so."
With that, my master retreated to his cabin, and I called the signal to arms. The Water Lily erupted into chaos. Everywhere was the clash of sabres and pistols. Now and then I heard the shriek of the officers' sonic weapons. But I was not alone. The half of the crew that followed the Christian faith fell in behind me with a rallying cry. They fought their Shinto crewmates with vicious determination, clearing the top deck within the hour. The loyal officers found themselves inexplicably delayed and thwarted in their efforts to dress and arm to meet the mutiny. The valets and batmen and bedmen had thrown their loyalty behind my uprising and bought us precious time to establish our control over the ship. The Chinese labourers rewarded my friendship with steadfast loyalty, throwing themselves into mutiny with all the desperation of men and women who utterly loathed sea travel and longed to revenge themselves upon their instrument of torment in any fashion. They lit fires and tore up the already ragged sails, causing some welcome chaos. The submariners did not appear. It seemed they had battened themselves in the hold for the duration of the mutiny, but perhaps it was the best outcome I could have hoped for, given my failure to impress their formidable commander. By noon, it was clear how the day would end. The mutineers raised a ragged cheer of victory. I myself had ended up with a debonair scratch upon the cheek, and had somehow come to be in possession of a brace of pistols and 3 sabres. By the time the captain and the officers returned, we had complete control of the ship. They were quickly trussed up and returned to their skiff to seek their fortune in Honolulu. Monsieur Fogg emerged, surveying the scene of recent battle with a calm eye. "Well done," he said with classic gentlemanly understatement. Still, it was well done, and more if I do say so myself. Lovely. We are onwards, and we're also nearly at the end. So we just about might make it to America in time for the 80 days to be up, which means we're basically halfway around the world, so not a terrific outcome, I'll be honest, but I have thoroughly enjoyed it. To my amazement, the successful mutineers held a vote and elected me the new captain of the Water Lily. I was delighted. Can you imagine, my friends, your humble Passepartout, captain of his very own ship? Rest assured, mes amis, it was in great part a ceremonial title which made no particular demands on my seamanship. Monsieur Fogg, though pleased by the success of our mutinous endeavour, seemed to regard my elevation in rank with some wariness.
"I am," he admitted as we prepared for bed, "somewhat put in mind of Bonaparte."
Parbleu. Well, I wouldn't put myself up there with Napoleon Bonaparte, but, you know. The new first mate, a cheerful girl by the name of Wang, came to me with an intriguing notion. "As you know, the Water Lily is a ship-to-submarine prototype," she said. "If the submariners cooperated, we could convert to submersible and make port at San Francisco in 2 days rather than 5. I called in Commander Davis, the leader of the submariners. She took her time about arriving and regarded me with insolence, which was most impertinent considering my superior rank. "I refuse to aid you, sir," she declared grandly. "You may lock me up, torture me, subject me to any indignity, but I will not conspire with you." I took her at her word and had her escorted away in chains. She spat at my feet as she was led off, but chose not to recant her position. First mate Wang looked rather mournful, but offered me a wan smile. Ah well, we will make San Francisco in 5 days rather than 2. It is no great hardship. It is when you have 6 days to get back to London. 5 days to get back to London, but, you know, it looks like we're going to end our journey in San Francisco. We spent most of the day repairing the damage done to the ship by the mutiny. First Mate Wang took care of the particulars. Take care of my particulars, darling, with an efficiency that I was loath to interfere with. Therefore, I spent my time at whist with Mademoiselle Loretta, who waxed lyrical about the grand adventure of our recent mutiny. I feel I have much to learn from you, Captain, she declared, batting her eyelashes in studied coyness. She's not trustworthy. First Mate Wang, still funny, came to me with a tearful request in the morning. Apparently she had something of a tendre for the formidable Commander Davis of the Submariners and begged me for her release. I granted it, wishing my captaincy to be remembered as a magnanimous and merciful one. She greeted my decision with unabashed and boyish thanks before snapping a precise salute. It was day 76. We had barely 100 hours remaining to return home. No, it's actually day 77. We were making good time to San Francisco and had repaired much of the damage to the Water Lily. I began to feel rather comfortable in my captaincy. I gave serious consideration to the seafaring life after my master and I had completed our around-the-world challenge. In the evening I spoke to Wang about our onward journey, and she told me that some buyers will pay well for top hats from Salt Lake City. An interesting fact, though I did not know if it would help. It will not help. Alright, we arrived at San Francisco 20 days after leaving Yokohama. We had managed not to lose even a single day despite the obstacles our seemingly simple steamer journey had thrown up. At my urging, First Mate Wang accepted the captaincy, Captain Wang, and bid us a sincerely tearful farewell as we disembarked. Right, there's nothing we can do except bed down. We've got 1 day left. San Francisco seemed less a city and more a ravenous beast, bent on consumption of everything, even of itself, within the ever-expanding city limits. Enormous steam-powered drills and diggers flattened hills, straightened roads, reformed neighbourhoods, and dumped the resulting rubble and stone into Mission Bay. I headed towards Chinatown to eat. It was a warren of crowded wooden and brick houses, temples, businesses, herbalists, laundries, and market stalls selling fruit and flowers. I was interested in conversation, so I decided to approach a young man with a queue ponytail who was relaxing outside a small shop with arms outstretched. He seemed to me to be a wrestler. Despite his slender frame, his arms were heavily muscled. His name was Jing Hu, and he was enjoying his single day off from working on the Transcontinental Railway to New York. "What are you doing with your day?" I inquired pleasantly. He sighed. "Sitting here smoking. I would see my family, but," he shrugged, "I've been away from home for a long time. Still, I should not complain. At least I have a job." What would he do once the railway was complete? Alas, I had little time to ponder this, as I had to bid him a hasty goodbye and return to my master. Yeah, we've got to go and face the music. Here we go. Let's quickly explore. Yeah, we've got some new routes. Utah, Salt Lake City, Cheyenne, Omaha, Burlington. Oh, there's Burlington. It doesn't matter. I sloped towards recently constructed Long Bridge, which was crowded with families out for a stroll and people fishing for silvery smelt with long poles. In the water was a jangle of rowing boats racing each other and boatmen taking passengers out to Mission Rock. Cheers and good-natured shouts emitted from a halfway house in the middle of the bridge. I peered at the halfway house and surmised from the revels I saw spilling out from its doors that it was some manner of drinking den. A man, red-faced and somewhat the worse for drink, bumped into me. I excused myself politely and he made an apology in return, slinging an arm around my shoulders. "Oh, hello," he explained. "You don't sound like you're from round here." Oh dear. Okay. "Oh, hello," he explained. "You don't sound like you're from round here." "You do not sound American either," I retorted. "No matter, I was Dutch once in a past life, but now I am as American as President Grant. This is a land of newcomers. You are a prospector?" "I am a magician," I said seriously, his eyebrow raised. "Are you? Then do a trick." I did a simple coin trick, taking one of his silver coins, squeezing it in one hand, disappearing it, and then miraculously recovering it from his ear. He was most impressed. As for how I did it, my friends, the answer is simple: magic. A brown-skinned woman slipped her arm into his. I looked for an introduction and the man smiled quickly. "Ah, my manners." He shook his ruddy face. "I am Anders, and this is my wife Jenny." "Pleasure to meet you." I kissed her hand. She was surprised but smiled. "Always a pleasure to meet Anders' friends." She looked askance at the whiskey flask in his hands, but seemed to find me unobjectionable. I hesitated, the obvious question about her origins on the tip of my tongue. "Are you—" I let my rather uncouth question trail off in embarrassment. She laughed with full-throated pleasure. "I am one of the Modoc tribe, what the new Americans call Indians." Jenny rolled her eyes. "I do not mind your surprise. Most of my tribe has been taken to the Klamath Reservation in Oregon." "What is a reservation?" Jenny looked at me with utter astonishment. "They are tracts of land where the First Peoples are relocated when the whites decide what they want, the gold, the silver, the coal, the buffalo in our homelands." Anders whispered something into Jenny's ear and she laughed, though I feared I had opened an old wound with my prying questions. I nodded and found my way back to Monsieur Fogg, who was sitting drinking tea with a disconsolate frown. "It tastes like soap," he remarked, but would say no more. Right, well, I mean, there's no point. We can depart for Gastown, but not the Gastown from Mad Max. We can go all the way to Burlington, but yeah, okay, embark. I mean, it's the end, so let's just go for it. It's a stupefyingly vain conceit. We were lucky to arrive in San Francisco just in time to catch a journey along the as-yet unfinished Transcontinental Express, which would take us as far as Burlington in 5 days with only a handful of stops along the way. That's very quick. But, you know, here we go. Coming up to 7 PM on the final day. Unless we have day 80 as well. In which case we might make it to Salt Lake City, but that's it. The first day aboard was enjoyable enough. American trains could clearly not compete with their European counterparts, but it was amusing to see them try. The posters proclaimed Pullman's Palace sleeping cars. And while not palatial, in the slightest they were at least serviceable. We sipped cool beer as we rattled through a long stretch of desert in the shadow of tall mountains. I attended to Monsieur Fogg and his delicate stomach, which was not entirely better today. Oh, we do have day 80. It's nearly over. Our fellow passengers were a curious mix of gold and silver prospectors, homesteaders, farmers from all corners of the world, Mormons, missionaries, soldiers, and a stiff-necked gentry of various sorts. I gave a young black woman with a deep red bonnet and an infectious laugh a wide smile. Her name was Diana. "I am meeting with my husband in Cheyenne," she told me. "He did construction work in New York, but New York isn't safe anymore. We have enough money to move now." "Why isn't it safe?" I queried innocently, having only the broad strokes of American news and history. "You did not hear of the draft riots in Europe?" she asked wonderingly. "New York has always had Confederate sympathies, and when the Union began drafting New Yorkers, they rioted. They killed and burned black homes, My husband has never felt safe since, but now we're moving to Cheyenne. She smiled, nearly glowing with happiness. I told her some tales of my adventures, which seemed to amuse her greatly, as the afternoon wore into evening and we passed by Ogden, close to Salt Lake City. We watched as passengers disembarked, glimpsing fertile fields and well-tended ranches out of the windows of the train. As we lay down to sleep, Monsieur Fogg murmured,
"Today is day 80, Passepartout. We have failed."
"Do not lose heart," I advised him.
"Indeed not," he agreed. "We must still return home, and as fast as possible."
Oh right, okay, so we can complete the journey then. Yeah, day 81. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm going to finish the journey, obviously, even though we've failed. I feel like, it's a first attempt. Today, a fellow with a painfully trimmed moustache and impeccable suit approached me outside the lavatory. I nodded at him companionably, and his thin lips parted in a contained grin. "I am Felix Granger," he said. "You are a puzzle." I was flattered. "Monsieur, moi, humble Passepartout? I am no more a puzzle than the sun's rise in the east. Truly I am the simplest of men. Oh no, do tell me how you came to be on the Transcontinental. Thereby hangs a tale. I can tell, good sir." It seemed a probing question which made me immediately suspicious of his motives. I made some non-committal answer, but he pressed me further. Finally, I confronted him and asked him his business outright. "You are a sharp customer and no mistake," he grinned. "Though I perceive no harm in you, I am a Pinkerton agent." I knew a little of the Pinkertons. They were a detective agency and had been hired by Abraham Lincoln himself during the American Civil War. "What are you doing here?" I asked, fascinated. He looked around before leaning closer to whisper his true purpose. "I am here because we have heard rumours that the outlaw Jesse James plans to rob this train, so keep your eye out." Interesting. We stopped at Cheyenne, Wyoming for a few hours in the evening. The Pinkerton agent disembarked to talk with a 6-foot-tall woman who wore the latest slim-trained skirts and a pistol tucked into her waistband. We watched none the wiser. At luncheon, I asked one of the women homesteaders, who informed me that she was Esther Hobart Morris, a justice of the peace, and indeed the first one in America. She sniffed. "Honestly, some women. What's wrong with being a wife and a mother, I ask you?" The Pinkerton agent boarded the train again before the last whistle blew, his face drawn and anxious. Jesse James gonna rob us now. We were held up by outlaws, as the Pinkerton man had predicted. They dragged tree trunks over the line and forced the train to a halt before boarding, brandishing pistols and sabres. They went carriage to carriage demanding valuables. Typically, the Pinkerton agent was nowhere to be seen. I looked at my master, who had a certain glint in his eye, and I did not doubt that he wished to resist the outlaw's demands. Being a man with the deepest respect for the law, the lead bandit fired his gun into the air.
"The name," he declared, "is Jesse James. Now you give me everything you got."
The sabre lifted to my throat. I had already hidden our valuables on the warning of the Pinkerton agent, so I invited him to search my things with little success. The sabre point moved on, now as it was at Monsieur Fogg's neck.
"What about you? You look good for it."
I jumped to his aid. "He is my gentleman," I declared. "I carry his possessions for him."
"Is that so?" the outlaw declared with interest. "So I should technically be taken from you twice, should I?"
There was no other option. I hit him. Not a heavy punch, but enough to send him reeling a touch, and then Monsieur Fogg, with a swoop, battered him over the head with a trunk, and threw the man out of our carriage. Through the window I saw him being picked up by a group of rather surprised soldiers, who waved thank you. Then the steam engine restarted and we were soon on our way, not much worse for wear. A kind fellow passenger gave me a spare pair of shoes, and a few hours later we reached Burlington. We disembarked, grateful to have arrived in one piece. Epic. Okay. We will have to explore Burlington to find an onward journey. Yes, we will. Right, I am going to end the episode here. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please press like, as that helps me, and I will see you next time for more 80 Days. Take care, and goodbye.